Okay, now, as advertised, we have Andrew Griffith, MP, the Shadow Secretary for State of Business and Trade. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a genuine delight to be here. Fantastic to have spent time with much of the supply chain of the industry as well in the exhibition stands, and to celebrate a really important economic growth sector of the UK economy, one that's not always supported, cherished, loved, and celebrated. So that's my purpose in being here today. And I mean that. My background was in business, and we need business and private enterprise to create the sort of sustainable growth that our economy so badly needs. And tourism is an important sector of the UK economy. And there's a little bit of adversity, if we're completely honest. There's an awful lot of additional red tape, too many taxes, too many planning impositions that just make life, in my observation, more difficult than it otherwise needs to be. I was in business for 25 years, and I have to say many days, although the role I have now, being in Parliament and government, is difficult, I do think very much so about how it must be facing some of these additional regulations, the headwinds, and the overall approach that the government is taking. National insurance rises, business rates, which is a big challenge before you've made your first pound of turnover or profit, and a lot of additional things that are coming down the track. So our vision, my vision, is one that is properly on the side of particularly small businesses, those that don't have the lawyers, the HR, the public affairs people to try and make their enterprises work well. And nothing I say is about just what's happened on this government's watch. I fear that for too long, I'm afraid, governments of all flavours rather lost sight of the importance of this sector and of small and medium-sized businesses in particular. So for those of you that were affected by that, I am more than happy to apologise and accept our share of responsibility. It was the previous government that abolished the furnished home letting regime and introduced council tax premiums on second homes, both of which were regrettable. We're under, like many enterprises, we are now under new management. Leadership does matter. And in Kemi, we have somebody who is principled, who herself was in business, and who, as business secretary, did much to try and stem the tide of red tape. So what roughly, and this won't affect everybody in equal measure, but just very roughly, what is that plan to get our economy growing again? How are we going to help the wonderful tourism sector? And I represent, by the way, an area in West Sussex, the wine-growing region of the United Kingdom, that is absolutely replete with small hospitality and tourism businesses. Farmers who did exactly what was asked of them and diversified and opened holiday lets or shepherd's huts or set up small hospitality businesses. Small enterprises designed to support the many festivals that take place in our tourism economy. I invite you all to come and visit the wonderful South Downs National Park in West Sussex, but it means that as a district member of Parliament, I have a line of sight into this important industry. So what can we do to help? What can any government do to help? It's unusual to have, perhaps, politicians at this sort of forum. Well, first of all, as a country, we need to get back to enduringly cheap energy. Big topic, complicated, but that is one of the headwinds that every business in the United Kingdom at the moment, particularly at the moment, and particularly if you were, for example, off-grid, requiring fuel oil or LPG gas, that is a very significant headwind. So we need to reform how energy works and provide support for small businesses in the energy system. Secondly, get back to a flexible employment model. We all want that right balance between the rights of employers and the right of employees, but the government is taking us in the wrong direction, making it harder for people in hospitality to be employed, and particularly at a time when there are almost 1 million young people who are not in work, education, or training. How can we do what the hospitality and tourism industry has traditionally done, which is provide people with that early experience of work? That was my first job as well. Next, take a chainsaw to red tape, whether it's the planning process, whether it's a new bed tax, a licensing or registration scheme. There's simply too much in this country and too many people who seem to feel that they are empowered to always say no, whether it's in town halls or in national regulators. And if we're going to improve our economy, improve our clock speed, support small businesses and enterprises, we need to make it far easier to get to yes. And then finally, lower and simpler taxes. We have a fiendishly complicated tax system. HMRC are right now unleashing something called making tax difficult, adding to people's burdens. And of course, that is something that as a small business steals the most precious thing that you have, which is the opportunity cost of time. I'm familiar with small businesses sitting there on a Sunday afternoon, trying to complete the VAT return, trying to work out the shift patterns, trying to get your tax affairs in order. And there's a real asymmetry. I notice of all of the supply chain that are here today, there's no one here from HMRC. There's no one come to say, how can we help? How can we help you navigate the myriad tax system? Instead, they push that burden onto you. If you owe them money, it's one interest rate. If they owe you money, it's another interest rate. And why wouldn't we want to rate? Anyone heard of Trustpilot and FIFO, the rating systems that are embedded in every one of the short stay platforms? I don't expect people to particularly love the taxman. I'm not that naive. But why wouldn't we rate our interactions with HMRC so that every time we interact, we expect the phone to be answered punctually, they deal with us politely and professionally, they give their name and give consistent advice. And if we introduced those tools to rate those interactions as businesses, that would provide a degree of accountability and a culture change within HMRC. We're also going to review IR35, which was a terrible, unintended consequence at best that has really damaged the opportunity for people to be self-employed and manage their own affairs. I often say the law that Parliament passes the most often is the law of unintended consequences. And I think IR35 is a really regrettable example of that. And I hope one day to be part of a government that offers us the chance to change that. So that is a rough outline of a plan to give us all hope. What is the purpose behind that? Is to get our wonderful country, this country with unparalleled history and values and heritage, architecture, natural landscapes, and wonderful people, the opportunity to once again grow. And I'm here today because your industry and the short stay part of that is a really, really valued part of that economy. And as someone from business myself, I often despair of how it is talked about, the false narratives that are portrayed, and the way in which that contribution is not properly recognized. So thank you so much to the Short Stay Association for having me. I wish all of you the very best for this conference. I think we might have a little bit of time if you've got any particular burning questions, and if not, I'll be at the back very briefly before I have to run off and go back to the House of Commons chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect, thank you. Guys, I think we do have a time for one or two questions if anyone's got one. We've got mics.
Hello? Hello? Right. Can you hear me? Andrew.
Now, I can't see you because I'm blinded by the light, so bear with me.
Andrew, my name is Matt Harris. I'm a holiday let owner of a couple of properties. And one of the things that really damages my business is VAT. As we're a very large overhead business, there's a very small room for profit. And so there are times when we have to actually shut the properties rather than go into VAT and pay probably as much in VAT as we would make in profit. So what would you suggest you would do about something like that for small businesses that are suffering with VAT?
So the businesses will understand, I think, about the need for the government to balance its books as well, something, by the way, it has not done for 25 years. Every year it borrows money, it puts up taxes, and it doesn't even get its own house in order and balance. So someone from business and someone who was a finance director, one day hard choices are coming so that the government can actually make ends meet and live within its means rather than keep coming back. So I want lower and simpler taxes. That is a core part of any centre-right party, but certainly the Conservative Party. We have delivered that in the past, albeit not in recent years. And VAT is one of those big taxes that when you look at how much you are spending, there's many other headwinds on costs, national insurance costs, the cost of business rates, council tax, many of the other levies and taxes that are being introduced, and of course, the potential prospect of a bed tax, a tourism tax. It's not just tourism, it's on anybody in the domestic economy. So VAT is a big part of that in the mix. A lot of businesses, particularly in hospitality, would like a lower rate of VAT, and that happens in other European countries. So we are an outlier. What I can't do today is commit to a particular number, or as importantly, the scope of that. Because I've got pubs who say, well, we want VAT to be removed on drink. Hospitality venues who say, well, can you take it off hot food? Other accommodation owners that want the accommodation element to be removed, and so on. So it's quite a big topic. It's well understood, the impact, and the best thing that we could do is try and lower all taxes in a way that we don't have to keep putting that burden on you. Watch this space, but the only way we're going to get to that is by the honest truths and tough choices.
Hi, Andrew. Eddie Leviton from the Tourism Alliance. Thank you for your support for the sector. What we're hearing from members at the moment across tourism and the visitor economy is they feel that the government doesn't have the right messaging about the UK, particularly since the Iran crisis happened. And they're asking for funding for Visit Britain and Visit England to be increased to promote the UK, both from inbound and also for domestic tourism. How do you see that working?
I think we should be much more muscular as a country. We've got wonderful, wonderful destinations, venues, attractions, and we are too shy and too abashed about doing that. Far too much government money goes on the overhead, the civil servants, the bureaucracy, the process, rather than, when I was in business, you measured the outputs. So you measured your marketing department as to what percentage actually gets spent on screen, on posters, in proper promotion, rather than being clipped all the way through the process. And I think as government, we've got that wrong. So more money for promotion above the line to tell our good story. The other thing is, as government, it's not just, and this is not to take away from DCMS, but you are an important business sector. It is of great regret that tourism and hospitality was not part of the government's industrial strategy, right? When we think about industrial strategy, that is just a basis. It's like any strategy document. It's like, what are we going to do? What are our strengths? And how are we going to compete as a country? And tourism and hospitality is a huge, huge sector at the best of times. It's an even more important sector if you look at the relativity of employment, and not to take anything away from different choices government makes. But when there were 900 jobs at risk in British Steel, they summoned Parliament on a Saturday, second time since the Second World War, and wrote an unlimited cheque. action this day. We need help for tourism, hospitality, many of the other sectors that are rooted in our communities, that often are the smallest of businesses, often with people who are female founders, people who would struggle with mainstream employment, people who are juggling caring responsibilities. All the things that we talk about, but it's actions, not words. And I want more actions. More actions now. I don't want to wait 3 or 4 years until we're back in government. But when we are, you can hold me to account for those.
We have
Right.
one final question.
On that, if there's one final question.
Hi there.
Oh, sorry, right.
I'm Charmaine. I work for a company that we manage. Sorry, we manage a number of properties on behalf of owners, but we find that the owners are starting to struggle, and we're having to push the rates up at night or per nightly rate right up to be able to accommodate the owners' losses that they're making because of the new regulations, and the new regulations coming in are also scaring a lot of potential investor owners away. Is there a movement or anything like that we can join to sort of help this along?
Yes. I have a chainsaw. It's revving up. It's full of fuel, expensive fuel. And I'm serious, as someone from business, about properly cutting red tape. Now, they all say that. And so what could be different? One, having those plans in advance. And so there are forums, whether it's the Tourism Alliance, the Short-Term Accommodation Association, that I will sit down with and talk about what are those regulations. The Conservatives have been against licensing. We've been against registering. There's a lot of other regulations that all the different levels of government in this country dream of piling on, and we are opposing many of those in Parliament. But please feed in. Anyone can find my name and email address on my website, andrewgriffith.uk. But please use associations to feed in what those regulations that we should repeal or prevent would be. They always creep up, right? They just creep up. It's like the boiling frog. Each of themselves, not necessarily objectionable at the moment it is introduced, but a little bit like income tax, which was a temporary tax. And here we are 130 years later, still living with it at its highest ever incidence. So bring us the examples, we can make risk-based decisions, and we can try and repeal some of those regulations. And we have to, because of that imperative to grow. As an economy, if you are passionate about the United Kingdom, you cannot grow it without sectors like tourism and hospitality. So we've got to do something that's not just more of the same that will lead to the same outcome. Thank you. Thank your owners as well. Right. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.